Welcome to Positive Talk Radio. We're glad you're here. I'm Kevin McDonald, your host for this grand adventure, and I thank you for joining us. You see, our mission is to create a positive, personal connection to all things with courage and love. We invite terrific guests, interesting topics, and great conversation, all in a fun, entertaining way. And we always manage to learn something, too. So I hope you will stay right where you are for this episode of Positive Talk Radio. And welcome, everybody, to Positive Talk Radio. I'll have to turn that off. My name is Kevin McDonald, and over there we've got a gentleman. You know, I said in the opening, I've got to say this, Asher. In the opening, I said that we're going to learn something. Well, you know what? Doggone it. I'm going to learn something today because what you're doing is new and it's unique and it's got a lot of creativity to it. And we're going to spend some time talking about what you're doing, how you're doing it, the products you're using and why you're using all of that stuff. And by the way, Asher T. Sinclair is with us today. He's going to be with us for the entire hour. And he is a digital eco
artist.
Oh, yeah. Right. I missed the easy one.
Right.
A digital eco artist. And he's out of Arizona. Arizona this time of year is kind of a weird place because it's got two different time zones in it. So it just depends on where you are as to what time it is. But it's a great place to live. And so Asher, explain to us exactly what a digital eco artist is.
So a digital eco artist, which I may be one of the only, just because I kind of coined the term.
You made it up.
Yeah. It's kind of a merge. So you have obviously an artist, which I consider myself an artist. You have an eco artist, which there's people like, one example is like Andy Goldsworthy, which has always been an inspiration to me, but where eco artists use things in the natural environment and create larger pieces, sculptures and things from that. And then me, the digital eco artist, where I've added the digital aspect because I use digital components like digital textile printing. I use digital photography. And of course, I use my computer to work with these and create these designs.
So you're creating these design, and they're really are designed to be shown for your creativity and for what you do. It's like being a painter, only you're using digital stuff rather than being a painter.
Exactly. That's actually one way that I kind of describe it is painting with my photographs. So I I'm not I haven't studied color theory, technically, but color has been a huge part of my life. And obviously being in the natural environment and photographing, I'm very observant of color and I love color. And something even from when I was younger, always matching, working to match my clothes, like always observing the colors. So I love taking the colors and seeing what colors work well together. And it's kind of something that I just naturally, kind of a natural talent of mine to combine different colors and see what works well together.
So because you are a photographer, you have a photographer's eye. And so you take the types of things that you create through photography, and then you put them digitally onto eco-friendly materials.
Correct. Yeah.
Hey,
so
I got that.
Exactly. So every design that I create, like the one that's right behind me here, was started on an adventure or a hike, exploring the natural world. So I'm out photographing, I'm taking images, or making images is another way to say it. And then after I've collected those, and when I'm out in the field and I'm creating imagery, I'm thinking about the different designs and how things might go together and what might work together. And so after I have that imagery, then I'll bring it back to the studio, and that's obviously has my computer and my hard drive, and I'll download. I usually have a lot of imagery, looking at different angles and different perspectives, which is really a big part of this too. Is something that I've learned on my journey doing this is looking at things from a different point of view. When I'm studying a subject, say a particular flower or a butterfly, or anything really in the natural world, tree, bark, things that I like to really kind of get close and zero in on, I'm looking at different perspectives of that thing. So kind of getting different angles. And that's something I've learned through my photography background. But getting those images, finding certain things and how they work together, really looking for the designs that you don't see, initially when you're out, but you really have to kind of go a little bit deeper, finding those and then kind of pulling that out and then working with that imagery. Then I go into the studio, and that's where I'm using software such as like Photoshop, and I'm cutting out imagery and then basically working with them, aligning them, and doing somewhat of a collaging with them would be a good way to describe it.
So let me ask you, how did you get started doing this? And obviously, you made this up, so because you're like one of the only people in the world that's really doing it. So where did that drive and that passion come from?
Well, there are other people that are printing, on textiles, obviously, and
Printing,
doing
yes.
that. I'll give them credit, and I would say kind of the thing that's unique about what I'm doing is more the photographic imagery. So a lot of people use files that are called like raster files, which are images that you would make in like Photoshop Illustrator. So you kind of implement the colors and things like that. But or I'm sorry, those are vector files. And then what I'm using is raster files, so which are the photographic imagery, and that's where it's kind of a little bit different. When it comes into the space a little bit more. Not as many people are working with a lot of photographic imagery and doing it, but it is something that's obviously available and that can be done. But it really started from back in 2011 when I was looking for alternative processes and ways to print my imagery and my designs onto things that would allow them to become functional.
Oh, okay.
So one of my first endeavors was printing onto ceramic tiles that could obviously be incorporated into like an interior, a home, that kind of deal. And then a quilter friend of mine introduced me to digital textile printing, and that's when I was introduced to Spoonflower. And that was back in 2011. Just before that, around 2008, and then there was a few years. And 2011, I really started zeroing in on it more. And basically, Spoonflower was one of the only organizations in the United States that was doing this because they had built some of their own printers. So digital textile printers. So they were really pioneering and have always really been the pioneers in being able to do it, and then being able to offer it to independent artists or emerging artists like myself, where I could print basically anywhere from like a limited run from 1 yard to, however, 50 yards if I wanted to. So a
You
lot of
know,
places, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
well, I was just going to say, I know so much about your industry that spoon flour I thought was flour that you get with a spoon. Oh, it's a real company.
How they came up with the name, I'm not sure. It might be a real flower. I haven't really dove into that, but I've always been a little curious, right? But for sure. So yeah, so they were pioneers, and I've learned more about that company than that organization, how they've grown and function and do what they do. They do offer three, if I'm not mistaken, three different organic cotton textiles that allowed me to print with them, because I wasn't going to print with anybody that didn't have an ethical, sustainable textile, primarily with a certification that I could get behind, and that's really what I was looking for. So, and again, at the beginning, that was pretty rare. So for them coming out of the gates, having that, it was perfect. It was a great pair match right there. Other companies use a lot of polyester, a lot of synthetics, a lot of poly cotton blends, things like that. And I just was not looking for that. I was looking for 100% natural fibers at the same time as ones that were certified organic, say with the GOTS certification, the Global Organic Textile Standard or certification. So that's a more popular certification. So so I was not only looking for natural fibers, but I really wanted to know the story behind the fibers, because when I was starting to print, I knew I could print on textiles, but I was like, what textiles am I printing on? And if I'm doing this imagery and these designs that are environmentally friendly and promoting my love for the environment and for the natural world, I wanted to use a material at the same time that was not obviously, polluting that environment, too. So I had to really seek that out. That's really where the adventure has begun.
Well, it's interesting because we had a gal on, and her name escapes me right now, who's in the fashion industry, and she was saying that the fashion industry is the second largest polluter in the country, behind, I believe, it's big oil, and using poly and synthetic things that are made from oil and that kind of stuff just is not good. So she's working to do that in the clothing world, and you're doing that with what you're doing. I think it's great.
Yeah, and I believe you're speaking about Elisa Couture.
Hey, you
Yeah,
know her. Okay,
yeah.
good.
So she was just she's kind of debuting her new book. Her new book's coming out, and so she's been a great person. I've connected with her, which has been great. But yeah, that's somewhere where I went. I kind of got taken into the fashion space through what I do and through the textiles that I work with. And of course, obviously, textiles are used throughout the fashion industry. But I kind of had to pull back. I did start a small brand when I was doing this and doing shirts and skirts, and evolved that. And that grew, and that was great. And that was around 2015, 2016, 17. And so that was awesome. Did a project where it was called Dirt to Shirt. And I took designs that I was creating and hand stitched them onto the Dirt to Shirt, which comes from TS Designs out of North Carolina. And basically what it is it's a shirt that's made from organic cotton that was grown and manufactured all within for our shirt was 600 miles. The whole process was done. And then at the time I was living in Hawaii, on the Big Island of Hawaii, and it would come there, and then I would hand stitch these designs that I was doing on them. So that was a great project, and just to have a trackable garment. Basically, I have one of them here. So with this, it actually has a trackable ability, where when you look in the seam of the shirt and you have the color there on the arm, and then down at the bottom there's a yellow, and you put those two colors into the website, and it will actually show you who the farmer was, with contact information, name, picture, the whole thing, who the spinner was, or who at least cleaned the cotton, who spun it, who manufactured it, who finished it, who created it into the garment, and then obviously we put ourselves at the end of the supply chain there. So
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that was a fun project.
Yeah. So I've got to ask you though, when you were a kid, were you more into photography, more into painting, or were you into climbing trees?
I was into the photography and the climbing trees. So photography I'd always gravitated towards photography. My mother had these cameras, these like DSLR cameras that were film, at the time, and before digital. And I would always be able to like use, she'd allow me to use the camera. So I'd always be like looking and going for like close-up shots. I loved macro. I loved the flowers and being able to get up close. And but I was photographing a lot. And my parents were both educators. And so in the summertime, we would go on road trips throughout the United States. So because we all had off for the summer. When we were younger, we would campground host in Aspen, Colorado, which was a huge inspiration for me, just for the natural world. We'd go up there, we'd come out of Arizona, Phoenix, where it was getting hot in the summer, go to Aspen, Colorado, where the snow was just melting off. And Aspen was just a haven for exploring the natural world. And I would obviously be climbing trees at that time and building forts and all sorts of stuff with my brother. It was just my brother and myself, and the photography and the camera was there again because my mother had the cameras. And then as we would go and do other road trips, like after that, we would go and do the East Coast, and then we did the West Coast. And then my father was a history major, economics teacher, history educator. So we'd always be hitting the memorials and all the natural sites and all the national forests and all the national parks, of course. And I remember my father one time saying, if you're going to be taking the pictures, you need to have people in the pictures, because he wanted the editorial aspect.
Yeah, yeah.
And he wanted to kind of like see people and like what things were happening, like this editorial photography. And I was always taking pictures of plants and like so that kind of evolved. I didn't let it get me down too much. I did do editorial photography. I worked for a newspaper for a while. So
Oh, that's cool. By the way, I just have to say, I think it's really cool that your parents and you and your brother went on road trips during the summer, and they had it. And a lot of people just don't have and Aspen, Colorado. I'll tell you, there is some beautiful, and that trip from Phoenix through Utah to get to Colorado, I tell you, it's breathtaking.
absolutely.
There's some places in this country that are just amazingly breathtaking, and I'm glad you had the opportunity to go do that, and
Me
that's
too.
great for your family. Is everybody still okay?
Yeah, everybody. Unfortunately or fortunately, one way or the other, my father has transitioned, or passed away. But huge inspiration for me and our whole family. And he was a writer, author, educator, creative, and so that and traveler and explorer. One of the biggest things was just one of the things that just really just monumental is he used to work at Saguaro High School, and he'd do these wagon train trips. It was called the
Oh, cool.
Grassroots Project. And the students, senior students would build the wagons, and they would go from Prescott, Arizona, all the way down to Scottsdale, Arizona, in the wagons, and relive the whole experience, the pioneer experience so that just in itself of just like him doing that was just so cool. And that was, I have a deep appreciation for the indigenous peoples of this region of Arizona, and of course all around the world. But it was a really cool aspect too, to kind of almost like stepping back in history and
Oh yeah.
bringing it to life. So doing stuff like that, it was just like the imagination, and just like I think that drive too of like nothing's gonna stop us, and we're gonna do this regardless if the school district is 100% on, and how we can kind of work around and make it happen, because it changed students' lives. They got into all sorts of stuff after that because
Oh,
of that.
it really would, because it's very. I would love to do that, except for they don't have indoor plumbing, and so that would be a problem. But
Yeah,
the kids, they learn so much about what happened and how difficult it was to the folks in the 1800s to make that trip from Missouri all the way to the West Coast. It's phenomenal that they could do, and the mountains that they had to go over, and the Rockies and the Cascades and the Sierra Madre, and
yeah.
it was tough.
Well, and it was because of that I spent a lot of time again out in the natural world, natural environment, and natural world, because my father had such an appreciation, right, for backpacking and hiking and being out. And he loved the West. He was originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and so, but when he came out west, just like a lot of people did, or have from the East Coast, it's like when he came out west, he was like total like cowboy, it's like total adventure, like like couldn't help himself, loved that aspect of it. So of course that's rubbed off on me throughout the years, and still does, still inspired by that.
Well, I'm really pleased for that, because you are working with natural things,
Mm-hmm.
natural products, and including we talked about before. You work with hemp,
Mm-hmm.
and then other products, and it's really is important as we move forward. Or actually, let me ask your opinion: is it important as we move forward to make a transition from like 100 years ago we transitioned to synthetics and man-made stuff? Don't we now have to transition back to natural ingredients?
Well, this is from my experience, because I've taught a lot of people and educated a lot of people about natural fibers. There's of course people that are going to connect with it, and there's going to be people that don't connect with it. And for me, that's completely fine. I've had to really release my attachment to kind of, I guess, changing the mindset of everyone, or at least even everybody that I even come in contact with. Like, it's more what I've found out to be way more important for me in my journey at this time is to do it myself. So if I'm living it and I'm doing it and modeling it, that's the most important thing for me right now. So is it something that I feel like everybody should do and it's kind of like the one way, the right way? I don't know. I cannot say that. But I will say for me that I am following my heart and basically my inner calling, and my inner calling is telling me to do this. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna follow through. And what my inner calling and my inner voice, or however you'd like to describe that, the calling, the downloads, it can be referred to in many different ways, is guiding me to do this work and to do it with natural fibers. And it does not work for me. It just does not feel right doing it the other way. And so I personally have had a major shift in my own life because through going through my process, I have evolved. This has been an evolution, involvement for me personally. So I've evolved going through this, of course, right? Going just over the years. And I have eliminated, basically, I've taken or synthetic fibers out of my life almost completely. So my shoes are made out of hemp, European hemp, and these come from Raw Organic. Shout out to them, where it has natural rubber, not natural fiber, but natural rubber from the rubber trees. The clothes that I'm wearing are all organic cotton. So, like in this particular shirt is hand woven. I have friends that make these garments in India, but it's hand woven. So it'd be considered khadi, which is a traditional Indian textile, which was basically developed by Gandhi, where it was what they used for basically independence, liberation. So the khadi is where it's all hand spun and hand woven cotton or organic cotton textile. So wearing the cottons, wearing the linens, wearing hemp, wearing the wool. I am a big supporter of wool. So having those things and basically what I'm marrying to my skin. And I know that you guys talked about it in your in your other presentations, some of your other talks, of the aspect of chemicals.
Toxicity on the skin coming from the clothing that is artificial.
Exactly. So once you start diving in and the information, like the amount of toxic chemicals that are used in the conventional way of producing and dyeing textiles, then you can't unsee it. So then you're gonna, like, this, for me at least, okay? Some people might be able to. And so I'm seeking out those textiles that are extremely clean to put on my body, and I'm just going through other changes just through my diet and lifestyle changes and stuff like that. So it just goes like together for me. It's like it just works. And so as much as I was doing like the fashion aspect of it, I'm not really at this time looking to create more of like a brand and those type of products. I'm looking at really doing my eco art, presenting that kind of in another way. And then I will personally be wearing these textiles. And if other people obviously are inspired by that and want to, resources or know where to, access them or whatever I'm doing, then obviously I'm going to be open to sharing that, with them.
Well, the thing is, by the way, we're talking with Asher T. Sinclair. He is a digital artist, and he's an eco-friendly guy. And I got to tell you a couple things. First of all, as we go down this road of life that we are all going down, there are more and more people that are interested in changing what they're doing, how they're buying stuff, where they're going, but they don't know how. So your education can be really helpful into teaching people what to buy, where to buy it, because a lot of people would say, if there was a store that was all natural that I could go to, I'd go there. And yes, in the conversation we had before, we talked about Nordstrom has got a few lines and stuff, but that's really is a sidelight. That's not the focus of their business. Um, and so you could make a whole business out of just educating people.
Well, and it's something that I do. I do presentations. I've done speaking engagements where I've talked with like the Arizona Department of Education. I've gone in multiple times with them, talking to educators that are actually in the fashion space. So they're in their in their schools. They run their fashion programs, right, within the schools. And so I'll go and talk to educators and educate them about what natural fibers are, or eco natural fiber, natural eco textiles, and then also what digital textile printing is, how I've married, brought the two together, and educating them. And I've also talked to other organizations as well, throughout Arizona here. I haven't done anything internationally at this particular time. Probably will happen in the future, or it will happen in the future, but mainly more here locally in Arizona. And so I've been really inspired by that. And it's really basic. It's really been an evolution for me because I've had to take that approach of like bringing it more to the forefront, and, and kind of presenting my way, all of the information and stuff, and really organizing it, right? Getting it put together to present it, which has been a great, a great thing for me to do, a great exercise. And when I was in Hawaii, I did speak to the University of Hawaii in Hilo. We were asked to come and talk about the dirt to shirt, to the fashion uh, community, the fashion department, that was there. So there's definitely been opportunities, and I'm all about that because I have an education background. I actually have an education degree. I've worked inside the public schools, and some charter schools as well. So I love the education aspect of it, and sharing, because I know it is challenging. I have gone through and tried to find these things, and I'm still searching. I'm still looking, and it brings up a really great point, Kevin, that when you can't sometimes find those things, what I'm working on right now is I'm just doing my own shirt. I'm doing my own so that I can really use the materials that I really want to use. There isn't anybody really doing it. So that's where sometimes we just got to kind of do it ourselves, and innovate it ourselves.
My executive producer calls that your niche. And you have to get your niche in
Right.
order to be able to be successful in business. And it sounds to me like you've got a couple of really cool niches that you can marry the two of them into something that can be really helpful. I wanted to ask you,
Hmm.
um, my son educated me on hemp. I'm a little older, and I wasn't used to the idea that hemp was as universally used or could be as it is. It can make first of all, it grows anywhere. It's a weed that pretty much weed. Maybe that's what we should call it. Anyway, it grows anywhere. It is you can use it for paper. You can use it for clothing. You can use it for rope. You can. It's stronger than the traditional ropes, according to him and stuff. Is it? Can we buy it? Is it legal in this country? Is it legal in some places and not in others? Where are we with the hemp debate?
So for me specifically, since I focus on eco textiles, I'm looking at hemp textiles, right?
Right.
When it comes to the other things like the building material, and I'm totally all about it. I love learning about it and consuming it myself. I mean, I consume hemp seed on a regular basis because I know that the beneficial properties that it has. I've done a tiny hemp home build where we built uh, a tiny home out of hempcrete, and so I've been participating in that. I personally am all about hempcrete. That will be something that I will be involved with again as we move forward on this journey, where I would basically would love a home that was built all of out of hempcrete. It will become more popular as it is a resource that's more renewable, and it will become more accessible. So when we talk about natural, or we talk about the textiles that come from the hemp plant, so because you have all these different things, like even the body care, the seed, the different materials, right? The different things that you can use it for. those all come from different parts of the plant. So depending on what part of the plant you're using will determine what you're making out of it. So, or the oil and those sorts of things. So when we're talking about the textile, we're talking about the stalk, the outer stalk of the plant. So with that, it needs to be industrial hemp. So industrial hemp is different than, say, CBD hemp. Like CBD plants that are grown for CBD are like a shrubby plant. It's been bred and grown to be really small, shrubby. And then industrial hemp is really hot, really tall stalks where they're towering basically over your head. I mean, they're at least, can be 12, 13, 14 feet tall. And wow, that's really what you need for the fiber, for the textiles. So right now in the country, in the United States, we're really focused on the CBD cultivation of hemp. So we're not as focused on the industrial hemp growing. Industrial hemp will be grown out in, large parcels, large acreage, right? So you'll have hundreds of acres of hemp. And that's something that will definitely evolve, over time here in the United States. The Farm Bill was passed. It's opened up the doors for a lot of farmers to get into the industry. One of the challenges that a lot of farmers will face when it comes to the textiles and the fibers, and then of course the hurd, which then creates the hempcrete, is the processing equipment. So that's where there's a little bit of a roadblock where if you don't have the processing facilities built out and established, then a farmer growing it isn't going to grow it because there's not a direct line, right? Yeah. So that's where there's been a little bit of a hiccup in that, but it is evolving. It's happening, but it's kind of going, a little bit slower. And again, the return on the investment isn't there as much as the CBD. Everybody's seen the dollar signs with CBD, so that's where everybody goes in. Everyone's going in.
Oh yeah.
And of course, the processing of it. Now they are making like a cellulose where they're taking the plant of the CBD plant, and after they've taken the buds for the CBD, they're taking the plant and they're grinding it down, and then they're mixing it with other chemicals. And then those chemicals will break it down and make it into kind of like a, more of like a paste. And then that's pushed through spinnerets and made into like a cellulose fiber, but it's basically like a viscose process. And so that I don't personally support that because I don't support the chemicals that are needed to break down that plant matter. And that's what's also used. And a lot of people have this mistaken for like bamboo being I would say a beneficial natural fiber that you'd want to wear. I personally am not about bamboo because it goes through a lot of the bamboo, a majority. There is a very small amount that doesn't, but a majority of the bamboo go through the viscose process, where literally it's bathed in multiple baths of chemicals, toxic chemicals, that then allow it to become the kind of the solution it needs to be to then be put through these spinnerets, which makes it into like a strand, it would be like a yarn at that point, and then that's taken and then woven. So see, people don't know about that. They just think bamboo, it grows fast, it's renewable, it's natural, we love it, but they're not really looking at how it's processed. And when you look at that and you see that dirty kind of process, then you're like, no, that doesn't make sense. But they are developing processes that are non-toxic. It's just they're a little bit harder to find. So that's a little bit on the hemp industry and where we're at. It's growing, it's happening, but we need basically what we really require our farmers to see the benefits of growing industrial hemp, which also has the seed that goes with it. The seed, the stalk goes along with that, and then the hurd is also there. So with industrial hemp, you get a lot more options than with the CBD. So it's just getting farmers to go in on that. And the investment's going to be high to kick off with, but it's going to be revolutionary, and it's going to pay off in the long run. It's going to go like multiple generations, right, for benefiting, opposed to just like boom CBD. That's where the money. And I understand different farmers are in it for different things, and that's fine. But there's a push for farmers to get into the industrial hemp and be growing it on that scale. And I mean, think about it, when we're growing a mass scale like that the amount of like carbon that's being taken, out of the atmosphere. And then the hemp plant, the root system regenerates and rejuvenates the soil and can literally take toxins and things out of contaminated soils, so it can be used to literally clean up places that have been contaminated. And it can also be used as a crop that's basically brought in with other crops, and it works well like that. So
I think that's wonderful, because we need. I was reading a report not too long ago. Do you know one of the chemicals that they find in soil virtually around the world? Jet fuel.
jet fuel, ooh, yeah.
Because if you look at the process of jet fuel, you have a jet flies overhead, and it has emissions, and those emissions stay up there until it rains, and then it goes into the groundwater, and then the Colorado River has jet fuel in it. And so we really need to clean up our environment in a whole myriad of ways. And I just think, by the way, do you write a blog?
I don't currently write a blog, but basically, what I've informed through my social medias, which I have all connected to my website, ashertsinclair.com, where you can get a hold of me on social media. It's a great thing that you mentioned that. It is something that I'm evolving into, to be doing that, and I should be doing that more, more frequently. Right now, I'm really focused on this project that is basically this grant project that I've really been focusing on to make it happen, and then create these designs and these tapestry, these wall hangings that I'm finishing as of right now. So I'm putting through my final run, but I'm stitching the whole thing. And so basically, it's been a really good process for me, where I'm creating this product, creating this tangible thing that people can then take and bring into their home. A lot of what I've been doing has been through the internet or through social media, talking about it, a lot of talking. And this is really a great opportunity for me to solidify and bring it together. So just to plug the project a little bit, in the grant project, I have successfully digitally printed my nature-inspired designs onto 100% certified organic cotton that was grown in Texas. It was spun in South Carolina. It was it was spun in North Carolina, manufactured in South Carolina, and then it was sent to California, where it was finished, and then it was printed in Missouri, and then it came here to Arizona, and I stitched it. So it's a made in the U.S. Product, again, from organic cotton that was grown in Texas, right here in the United States. So it's a testament really to farmers like the ones in Texas that have a cooperative, where they've had to pool together and come together to create the amount of organic cotton to kind of bring it to market, and to have it accessible to people like myself or to other textile designers to create these textiles. And make that happen. And of course, organic cotton is going to be grown without herbicides or pesticides, insecticides. And it's basically, obviously a very natural process, but it takes a lot of knowledge. It takes a lot of commitment. It takes, the farmers have really had to dedicate themselves to that. And for me, as an eco artist, I'm here celebrating that and sharing that, as well. And of course, they're digitally printed with non-toxic, biodegradable, non-hazardous inks, and using a 100% waterless printing process.
Well, it's amazing. By the way, when you do start writing a blog, I would love to put that onto to Positive Talk Radio, because we have a blog that's beginning, and we'll give you your own byline and everything.
Love it.
Because this is something that is really, really important for us going forward, because I'm not going to have to see what could happen if we don't change our ways. But there are younger people, my kids, my grandkids, are going to have to look at that down the road. And so if we can change it, even just a little bit, and we can change it. But over time, things that were too expensive at one point, they tend to come into line because everything else changes as well. And when that happens, then we can we'll have a growing, thriving business. And
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Kevin. And I mean, you're absolutely right. That's what's happening with the hemp industry. The price of things is going down as amount of people and farmers are getting in that aspect. And it's happening. The evolution is happening from where I stand and where I see it from 2011, 2008 even, but really 2011 kind of getting into the space to where it's at today. I mean, the consciousness level of where people are at with, say, the fashion and all that, because of social media, because of the internet, it's really spread that word a lot more. It's, through the video content and people sharing what's really happening, documentaries, and sharing this, people are able to then be aware of it and then make choices and seek out. But there's also these emerging designers that are able to come on the platform and be able to create smaller brands, smaller lines, and more kind of create on demand and then present that. So there's a lot more of those brands that are evolving too. But again, and I think like you bring up a great point of, obviously, if it's not just our generation, and I've felt the same way, I'm not doing all that I'm doing just for me and this generation. And right now, this is really a testament, and a celebration for the next generation too, to just kind of have these, like, a little bit of a breadcrumb, for the next evolution of where they'll take things. But I do see it happening. And I think just the fact that I'm evolving and I watch myself evolve through this process, then it's kind of like, if I'm doing it, really anybody can do it. And more people will do it, really.
Exactly, which is really good. Let's talk about your the tapestries that you're doing for the grant. How did you get the grant?
So the grant was
for?
Yeah. So the grant was through the Arizona Commission on the Arts, and so that was here locally. So it's for, obviously, Arizona artists, and it was called the Research and Development Grant. So there was an artist grant that I originally, through the same organization, I applied for, and I got denied. And that was like an artist opportunity grant. So I thought, oh, this is great, this is perfect. And then I got denied. Then the woman emailed me and said, we have the Research and Development Grant coming up. I think you should go for that. And so I was like, okay, that's great. So I kind of worked my grant just a little bit, not much. It was basically, it's the same thing because it's the same concept. I already had the concept in my mind. I already knew what I was going to do. And so I presented that, and sure enough, I got that grant, which gave me literally twice, if not three times as much funds to do the project. And so I was like, okay, this is great, and it was kind of a moment for me. I was like, if I get this grant, like, this is a sure sign that I need to keep, moving forward. And sure enough, boom, it hit. I was like, okay, let's go. I knew exactly.
Be careful what you wish for.
I know, and I am, and I'm very focused with that, and in kind of in my purpose in life and what I know I'm here and working towards. And so basically, how I wrote the grant was, I was going to digitally print my designs onto organic cotton that was grown and manufactured in the United States, and then, of course, print it here in the United States, stitch it. And I did want to mention that it's all stitched with organic cotton thread, which is another aspect of this, which we don't actually manufacture organic cotton thread in the United States, believe it or not. That's a thread that we do not process here in the United States. So it comes from organic cotton that was grown in India and then processed there. So that was literally one of the only component of this that I could not get in the United States or made in the United States, because it literally doesn't exist. So it would have all had to be hand woven. And kind of with Made in America, there's a percentage, and the thread is a very fine percent, but of course it is still all organic cotton, and the best that we could do now. And so basically with that process, I went, at the time, once I got the grant, I thought I knew who I was going to be sourcing my textiles from. And I went to them, and they said, we've sold out of that canvas, that organic cotton canvas. And so I was like, okay, great. What am I going to do now? Because this stuff is extremely rare. So I do my homework. I'm researching around. I find another source for it, and it's a twill. So very similar to like a canvas material. It kind of has like diagonal lines going through it. And that's the one that I went with. And it's literally the only organic cotton twill that is grown and manufactured in the United States. This fiber right here is literally one of a kind, the only one that exists in the United States with that story. So there are other types of weaves or knits that are made in like more of knits. That's the stretchy material. Knits that are made in the United States with organic cotton. But when it comes to the twill or it comes to like a woven fabric, this is literally one of the only ones, if not the only one. So I was extremely excited about that. And then it's just basically been a huge learning curve for me, because this is the largest print run that I've done on my own. I was doing a lot through Spoonflower and stuff. So this one, it's like I had all creative freedom, and I'm running 9 different designs, which will all be created into tapestries like this, which are roughly 24 inches by 36 inches. And have an oak dowel through the top there, which are also made in the U.S. And basically brought it together into something that I could create instead of outsourcing somebody to kind of stay within that budget. So this was something that I always wanted to do, and it allowed me to actually go in, and I'm doing all the stitching, finishing the edges, and doing that, which I've had a passion, obviously, for doing the hand stitching, but just for learning that technique, because through the fashion space, I've had a deep appreciation for what people do to create garments, because it is a lot harder than it looks. And one example of that was I created a jacket. And this jacket, when I went in to do this jacket with some local designers here, local manufacturer, this is made with ahimsa silk. So the silk lining on the inside, ahimsa silk is also called pea silk. It is created where they don't boil the silk larva or silk worm alive. They actually allow the larva to become a moth and then fly away from its cocoon. And so it's called pea silk. And then the outer shell is a cruelty-free wool that is basically all dyed with it's low impact dyes and comes from Australia. So that project, though, I didn't nail it down. It was one of my first. I didn't nail it down. There was a lot of things that went kind of wrong with it. And just through that, right now, I'm currently working on a shirt like this, where I'm working with another designer to create that garment and that shirt. So I figured, okay, the jacket, very complex, very hard. Let's step it down a notch. Let's go to the shirt. Let's go to the shirt first, okay? So that's just been, again, learning about that. But that's a little bit about the grant. And I will be releasing the collection on my website on AsherTSinclair.com. Again, AsherTSinclair.com. And I'll be also putting it out. Yeah.
That website again is
AsherTSinclair.com. And I'll be putting it obviously on my social media. I'm already sharing some of the first ones that I've been creating on my Instagram and of course Facebook too. So
I'm curious it never dawned on me. What is thread made from?
Well, it's made from the fiber. So if, let's say, like you have, and this is, a great question. I actually, since I've gotten more into this, I had friends that were actually growing cotton, and they didn't want their cotton plants, so they gave them to me. So I ended up actually growing some of my own cotton. So this is a great lead into this. So they had already sprouted the plants, and the plants were going, they kind of went dormant. So I pretty much had to water them and baby them. But this is basically organic cotton. And because it's grown without any herbicides, pesticides, or anything like that in organic soil. And so this is actually what the thread is made from. So this fiber, which for cotton is a very short fiber, it's very short. For other fibers such as hemp, it's a very long fiber. It's a bast fiber, very long. But for cotton, it's very short. But basically, this is taken, and just to kind of take a little sample of this, and this, say with indigenous tribes, this was used with drop spindles, which were just like, it's basically like a hand tool, and they would use a drop spindle and spin this. But basically, as you twist this, the fibers interlock with each other, And as you twist it, and then you kind of twist and pull, it becomes stronger and stronger. But as that drop spindle keeps the weight going down, and that's what allows this whole fiber to spin, and that becomes the yarn. So the drop spindle is obviously traditionally used through indigenous, peoples and throughout time. Then of course it's evolved into industrial equipment. So that spinning of the fiber is a whole industrial process now. But before that, it has to get cleaned. It's got to go from the bowl to getting cleaned, and then carded, combed, and gets into where it can then be spun, and then it's woven after that, or manufactured.
So when is the project complete, and you're going to show it on the web, and are you going to have like a art showing of the thing, and like in a building and stuff?
Right. Well, basically that has been the plan all along. Of course, with the situation, pandemic, and things happening, now things have kind of evolved. At the beginning of it, because I got the grant at that time, and I was kind of unsure, and I knew I'd be doing a lot of it online. So of course I'll be sharing it out online, but a lot of focus wasn't necessarily on being able to do it, say, somewhere, because I didn't know where we would be at. But it was basically looking at how I would basically do something like an exhibition or an online exhibition. So at this point, I don't have somewhere where I'm going to be presenting it in kind of in the physical, but I guarantee you that that will happen. And locally here, I do have some places that I'm looking at, but I've entered some shows, some exhibitions and stuff. So I've had it accepted into some exhibitions, but basically with that, only like 1 or 2 designs go out at a time. But basically to do like a full-on show, that will be something that I will be evolving into doing, especially with this project, to share what it is and what's going on with it. I will say I have been focused pretty much 110% or 111% on just accomplishing it and getting it done, right?
Yep.
And so it's scheduled to really be done by the end of this year. So going into 2022 is when it will be prepared and ready to really be presented. But I'm really focusing on creating a number of them so that they can be, so they can be consumed by other people, taken into their homes, and allow them to have part of this eco material in their homes, making more of an eco home.
And now, have you, me being a former business guy, I'm always curious. Have you looked at the cost effect ratio of that, and how much you would actually have to charge somebody in order to make a living doing that? And is it doable, I guess would be, and like, as an example, how much is that worth behind you?
Well, these prints behind me, this I will be selling for $260.
Oh, that's cheap.
It's extremely inexpensive, okay? And the reason is because I want to share this, first of all, with people. I want to bring it into a price point that people can actually consume, and not necessarily your quote unquote art collectors or people that are in the art space. I really want to bring this to like anybody that's really passionate about it or wants to have it in their environment, to bring it into their environment. So this project really is not for me to, necessarily, it's more of a launch, it's more like a launch pad for me more than anything. And so as I get these designs, and this art for me has been extremely healing. This is extremely healing process. And of course, with this, the mandala design, people will see different things, within the designs too. Things will come out and like kind of show themselves all the time. Like when I'm kind of looking at them or exploring them, little things, just either a little kind of character might kind of be there, kind of in that divide or heart in that aspect. So anybody that really wants to have it in their environment, I want to make it accessible to that, because the price point was, it could go higher, but I'm not really concerned with that. And
as long as you don't starve, that's the thing, because because it doesn't do anybody any good if you starve to death and can't afford to do this anymore.
And that is true. And I am actually doing my MBA right now, which you'll appreciate as
Very
being
good.
in business.
Yeah.
And I have learned on my journey to even do sustainable business, to be a sustainable business, you obviously need profit. So believing in the triple bottom line, people, planet, and profit. So the profit obviously will allow me to continue, thank you, to do the work. And even with that price, I will be able to profit. However, there is probably a good amount of my time that's been into it, taking the imagery and all of that, that really I'm almost gifting to people at this point, because
Sure.
there is a lot of time that's gone into this and research for sure. So, but I want people to really get inspired by it and then obtain it. And then of course, as I keep developing and keep things going on, it's more about really getting it into, because that's where it really belongs. It's like, I'm doing this to share it. I really require to get it out there. And I don't want to hinder myself, obviously, through the price. So I've got all my shipping supplies going right now. I'm zeroing in on that. It's going to be all eco-friendly shipping supplies. So when it gets shipped to you, it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be coming from recycled cardboard. Everything's going to be biodegradable shipping materials, even down to the labels. So I've spent a lot of time in that too, to really assure that this whole process is really as ethical and sustainable as I can really make it at this time.
And I would venture to guess, now this is just me, but I'm just going to venture to guess that as an artist, that you are inspired, and sometimes you don't know where the inspiration came from. It just showed up, and it came out to be just a beautiful piece, beautiful creation, and you don't even want to take credit for it because it just kind of showed up. Is that correct?
That is correct. And what I like to say in that process is that a genius doesn't actually exist. It's the genius, and the genius channels or flows through you. So what will happen for me is I'll start working on something, on a design, and it will go where I didn't even expect it to go. And as I work with it, and as I build a relationship with it, and in the imagery and the different imagery, it will fall together. And I even sometimes will be like saying in my own mind to myself, like, this design really wants to, be created, because it's kind of speaking, it's kind of like a language, this visual language, and it's kind of happening. And I'll kind of pull back. And there's designs that I've created. And then for this collection that I'm going to be debuting and presenting, there's designs that were, that I had created, and I went back into them and tweaked them a little bit and really refined them even more. And that's kind of what it was really calling for. And you're right. It's the genius that you put yourself in the position with the tools to start creating. And you just start, it's kind of like what I like to say, tinkering, you start tinkering with things. And before you know it, it's like you're in that groove, you're in that flow, and then you kind of step back from it. But it is, for me and for a lot of artists and creators, it's a very, it is very meditative or quiet time space where you kind of get in that zone, you get in that flow, and it evolves, evolves. I like how the images come together, and how, like, I still surprise myself. I mean, even this design behind me has still kind of like, how did that all really, but I think, yeah, just putting yourself in that space, and you kind of, and you work with it, and it's kind of like a pottery, right? And you kind of, on the potter's wheel, it's like you work with it, and before you know it, it's like it's turning into that masterpiece.
It's like authors do it, writers do it, singers, songwriters do it, poets do it, mechanics do it. There is a flow that when you are attached to the flow, I call it the life flow. And when you are attached to that and fully engaged with it, things beyond your wildest dreams that you had no earthly idea could happen.
Exactly. And I even like to say, like, even the aspect of kind of being psychic in a sense, or kind of receiving that message, is I honestly believe that everybody has that ability. Everybody in body, human form, has that ability to tap into that. So it's not like there is a psychic, or she's a psychic, or he's a psychic. It's like we are all have that ability. We all have that psychic ability. And that kind of energy and that flow is really kind of where this is and where this is kind of tapping into. And it takes practice. I'm still practicing. It takes practice to kind of get in your flow and find your groove and find that space. And I can't really, like, I've never been able to really say that I can, recommend anything for anybody, because you never know how something might inspire somebody, because it's really the journey where when it happens, like, it'll happen and it'll click and you'll know. So if it's not, like, if you don't feel like it's happening, literally, from my personal experience, that is gaining the respect for patience and building patience. And you wait, and as you wait, and things will come, it will come through, but it's the patience that's really required. And I've had to be extremely patient through what I'm doing. And when you do learn patience, that's a really deep lesson that we all obviously require to learn.
Oh, exactly. We'd like to follow you and to see where you go with all of this. This would be really cool. So can we invite you back? Will you come back?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be awesome. I would love to do that.
Oh, awesome. Because we want to follow this, and when it gets released, and we can show the pictures, and we can do some fun stuff with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm evolving as artists. I mean, there's things that I'm doing behind the scenes, obviously, from this project. And, there's constant, like, that next gen, that next generation of what I'm doing and what I'm going to be releasing. One thing that I just like to share with people, just to kind of take that perception out of things, is this particular fabric is a knit fabric, right? And that fabric, if you could guess what that fabric is, being that it's like see-through, you can pretty much see through it. What might you just guess, wildest dreams, what that might be as a natural fiber? And these are things that I'm always learning.
Yeah, I don't know. Coconut?
Great. I mean, yes, absolutely. They do make, natural fibers out of coconut shells for coconut core. Absolutely. That's wool. So this is wool. So a lot of people think wool is so bulky, and this is actually a wool that's been made into a knit. And so that too is just kind of showing, like, where things are going, where things are evolving, that actually wool isn't just like this bulky, textile. It can be this knit material that actually a shirt or an undergarment can be made out of. And wool has amazing properties to keep you cool in the summertime and warm in the wintertime. So there's aspects of just like that, learning about different textiles. There's a banana silk textile, that comes from the banana stalk of the banana. Different people. So as I come back on, like you're asking me to do, different people are doing different stuff, and new stuff is evolving and coming out. There's different textiles that are being created from mycelium, from being grown, just like mushrooms in mycelium, or fungi is being grown. So that's called an alternative leather that's happening there. So but yeah, I'm always learning. There's always something new, coming up. And again, there's a bunch of different natural fibers that I've researched and we could talk about, but of course we can cover that next time.
Absolutely. Well, we've come to the end of our time together today, Asher. By the way, go to AsherTSinclair.com, and you will learn all about him, and give him a call or email him and just say, I love what you're doing. And when you get to a point where you can tell me how to do what you're doing, then you can charge me for it.
So that's awesome. Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate you having me on today, and just basically taking the time to hear my story and what we're creating as a community. Really, I mean, this is a team effort. This is happening together.
Yours is a great story. I applaud you for not disregarding your talents and following through and following your heart, because your heart told you natural ingredients. You didn't want to mess with the other stuff because you want to be a leader in this. And I think that's wonderful. As a last moment, if there's anything that you would like to say to our audience now or in the future, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, I appreciate that, Kevin, and just seeing that basically this has been a journey, this has been an evolution, and if there is something that you're out there for all the listeners, viewers, that you're working on, let it evolve naturally. It's going to evolve naturally, and if you have that inside of yourself, if there's something there that's kind of calling, and maybe you're not doing it or doing it all, it's all part of the process. It's all part of the creative process. So if it's not the actual form that you're creating, or the piece of art, or the the masterpiece, or whatever project you're working on, there's other things that you're doing that are actually assisting with that whole process. So it's not just the end product. It's kind of like it's a journey. It's a journey, not a destination. So it's all part of it, and loving the process. And I do honestly believe that we all can have a deeper connection with the natural way of life. And I am all about that. I'm inspired by it, and I'm just excited to see kind of where it evolves and grows. And if there's anything that's out that you're working on, projects that you're working on, just allow it to kind of evolve naturally. And it hasn't for me personally, it hasn't just been boom and everything's happening. And that, I think, is actually one of the best parts of this, is that it's really been a journey. And I will say too, that this has all been really amazing to see all the people and connections. And that's really what's been a big part of this, is just from what I do, connecting with the community and connecting with people that are like-minded in the space. And that has supported me in my healing of, going through my evolution. And I've just realized that more recently than anything, is this might not even be all about the art as much as just making human connections with people, just like we're doing right now, and having these conversations and connecting as fellow human beings and in body form. So that's what we'll see how it evolves.
That's beautiful.
Let the adventure continue.
That's right, because you're right. It's a journey, not a destination. And you enjoy the journey, and over time, you don't know where it's going to go.
That's right.
Because you don't get to have that forethought, but somebody else that is imminently involved in your life does know, and they're planning it for you. So at least that's my firm belief. But because and I just want to leave with you, Paul McCartney, who I've known since he was first came out in '64, he doesn't have it all figured out yet, and he's the most prolific songwriter in the history of mankind, and he still says, I'm still learning, I'm still evolving. It never ends until it ends.
And maybe together we have it all figured out, but singly, individually, no one's going to have it figured out. But that's collectively, it is, it's there. It has been figured out.
Exactly. I'd like to thank you again, Asher T. Sinclair. Go to his website at ashertsinclair.com, and you'll find out all about him. And good luck when the unveiling and the showing and stuff. That's going to be an exciting day for you.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Kevin. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
You'll be on again. So stay right where you are, and I'll be right back.
Thank you.
Hey, and thanks for listening to this episode all the way to the end. Hey, pretty cool. Hey, don't forget to follow us so you can receive regular updates and new posts. And remember, take care of each other, because each other's all we got. See you next time on My Independence Report.